Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome everybody here at our press conference. In the first place, please allow me to welcome Stanko Nick, who is ambassador of Croatia accredited to Hungary, and I also would like to welcome Mr. Persányi, Minister of Hungary, responsible for environment protection. And with this, I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Persányi, our Minister. I'd like to welcome everybody here, and I'd like to remind you what happened in the past weeks. In fact, the news about the Novovilia power plant, hydropower plant, have become accelerated, and more news have been received about this. It has become intensified on behalf of the press and also on behalf of the social and civil non-governmental organizations. In relation with this, our ministry last week issued a press communique, and after the issuance of this, the ambassador sitting next to me, responsible for Croatia, called me on the phone and asked me to have coordination about the matter.
A magyar fél pozíciója világos ebben a kérdésben. Egy 1999-es
I think the position of the Hungarian party is absolutely clear in that respect, and it is shown in fact in a government resolution which was issued in 1999. And me, who was appointed in fact by a Hungarian Liberal Party, I have no reason in fact to change this position of my country.
Ugyanez a határozat azt is kimondta, hogy
and at the same time, the same resolution also underlined the importance of the ESPO convention, which is on the environmental impact assessment issues, and it also emphasized the need to carry out environmental impact assessment, which was specifically requested by the Hungarian party.
Ez a hatásvizsgálat még folyamatban van.
And in fact, this impact assessment is in process at the moment. The Croatian party requested a last consultation, and in March, in late last year, a public hearing was held. Consultations are continued in that
A
respect.
hatásvizsgálat eddigi eredményei nem változtatták meg a magyar álláspontot. Úgy
In
véljük,
fact,
hogy
our
a
position will not
beruházás
change in that respect, because what we find on the basis of the results that we have so far from the impact assessment, in fact, the state of environment of this region and this part of the river is further endangered, and the hazards are still there. Any change like this will in fact endanger the ecological state of the river. Plus, we also have to mention the Natura 2000 network, and we have to consider the relevant European Union directive, which make it compulsory, and it's not optional for us, compulsory to identify and to appoint Natura 2000 areas here, which means that we have no way, in fact, to release the obligation to declare these areas being under protection.
A hatályos kétoldalú egyezmények alapján Horvátország a
In
Drávát csak
accordance with
Magyarország
the
beleegyezése mellett
bilateral
építhet
agreements that are in
jogszerűen
force at the
vízi
moment, Croatia can build a hydropower plant on the Drava River only with the permission and
Ilyen
consent
megállapodás a
of
magyar és a
Hungary.
horvát kormány között
An agreement like
1994-ben.
this was passed and concluded between Hungary and Croatia in the framework of an agreement on water management and cooperation
Van
in this
olyan
area.
nemzetközi szerződés is, amelynek mindkét fél részese.
Plus, we are also part of and parties to international conventions that both parties, us and Croatia, are parties to the convention, and these conventions state that we need the consent of both parties in order to implement
A határokat
constructions
átlépő
like that.
vízfolyások és nemzetközi tavak védelméről és használatáról szóló Helsinki Egyezmény
In accordance
szerint,
with the Helsinki
amennyiben
Convention,
Horvátország
which is in
magyar
fact on the transboundary water courses, protection of the transboundary water courses and international lakes, in case Croatia gives permission, gives green light to the implementation, investment of this dam, of this barrage system, then Hungary will turn to the arbitration court of the previously mentioned Helsinki Convention. We are absolutely certain that no steps like this will be needed.
Meggyőződésünk ugyanis, hogy Horvátország, ugye Magyarországgal nagyon jó szomszédi viszonyban.
We are convinced and fully persuaded that Croatia has got a good neighborhood contact and relationship with Hungary. And Croatia is also making steps towards to become a member of the same European Union that Hungary is going to become a member of in a few weeks' time.
Bízom abban, hogy Horvátország nem engedélyez egy olyan beruházást, amely közös
Croatia is not
európai
going to give green
természeti
light, is
értékeket
not going to give
veszélyeztető.
permission to an environmental investment, which is in fact endangering our joint and common environmental and nature values. Thank you very much, and please allow me with this to give the floor to Mr. Ambassador.
Köszönöm szépen, miniszter úr. Jó napot, hölgyeim és uraim. Sajnos nem beszélek magyarul. So, with your permission, I will continue in English. I would like, first of all, to thank very cordially Mr. Minister and the Ministry for Environment for giving us the possibility of appearing together in front of the public opinion of Hungary and expressing the preoccupations and the priorities of both sides.
I'd like to apologize in the first place for not speaking Hungarian, so I will have to turn to English, és most magyarul folytatom, mert ő is megfordította. Szeretném megköszönni miniszter úrnak azt, hogy szívélyesen fogadott engem. Köszönöm Magyarország Körrnyezetvédelmi miniszterének és Vízügyi Miniszterének, hogy fogadott és biztosította a lehetőséget, hogy elmagyarázzam a sajtónak azt, hogy melyek azok a dolgok, amelyek fontosak számunkra, és itt tulajdonképpen az önök személyében Magyarország nyilvánosságának magyarázzuk ezt el.
I would like to start more or less in the same tone as our host, Mr. Persanyi, did, by stating that there is no changes in the policy of the Republic of Croatia, although we have a new government since a few weeks. I hope that you don't expect me to say, no, we have our firm position and we don't give away from it. We don't have a firm position, or actually the firm position is that we do cooperate and consult with our neighbor, and particularly when our neighbor is a country with which we have such good and friendly neighborly relations as it is the case with Hungary. So there will be no sensation in the articles that there is big confrontation between the two governments. There will be no such. The new Croatian government will continue the policy taken for a number of years by its predecessors, and that is continuous friendly practice of consultations and cooperation. The previous two ministers in charge of environmental issues in Croatia, Mr. Kovacevic and Mr. Banac, have had in the past few years at least 3 and probably more meetings with Mr. Persanyi's predecessor and himself in 2001 and 2002, and perhaps 2003. And we hope that the exchange of views and the contacts will continue in 2004 and 2005 and so on. Not about Novo Virje only, of course. And the new government will strictly observe its, first of all, constitutional obligations to take care of the environment, built in the Croatian constitution, but also its international legal obligations according to bilateral agreements, but also according to multilateral agreements like Espoo Convention. Croatian government is expecting that the procedure foreseen by the Espoo Convention shall be fully implemented, and that precisely on the basis of the environmental impact assessment foreseen by the Espoo Convention, a final decision might be taken on the acceptability of an idea, I wouldn't even call it a project, could be taken, having in mind all interests, of course, including environmental priorities of both countries, Croatia and Hungary. But let me be perfectly clear. we are not building anything, and we are not going to build anything irrespective of the result of our consultations, nothing on Drava River for at least next 7 to 10 years. The contacts between the two governments and various expert teams have been very intensive in the past 3 years. There were at least 30 meetings, exchange of documents, exchange of expert findings, etc. And we are precisely interested to proceed with this kind of exchange of opinion. The environmental impact assessment is, of course, a matter for the expert assessment, expertise, and exact scientific methods. It cannot and should not be subject to emotional reactions, to protests, or plain frontal refusal of any technical innovation like we have it in both countries, in Croatia just as well as in Hungary. The Americans have a very good expression which says there is no free lunch. It means whatever you do, or even whatever you refuse to do, has its price. We are fully aware of the price that one society, a state, or an individual might pay taking a decision, but sometimes we are not aware of the price that one has to pay not taking the decision. Every solution brings new problems. If we do not take a decision on one side, we have to take it on the other. The other side might be, let's say, nuclear energy, it might be some alternative forms of energy supply, etc. Each one of them creates some problems, including environmental problems. The concept of the solution envisaged for the area of Novo Virje is a multi-purpose system which has, of course, its energetic, but it has a number of other facets, other aspects, like water management, environmental settlement, ecologic aspects of other characters, tourists, transport, archaeologic, etc. The fact is that on the upper flow of Drava River, above the confluence of Drava and Mura, there are already more than 20 hydroelectric plants built in Austria and in Slovenia. The result of these solutions, of these constructions, could be felt, and they are felt both in Hungary and in Croatia, and they are not always very positive. The last of those projects was not executed as a concept of the final dam on Drava River. The concept of Novo Virje has, among other purposes, also the goal to correct those mistakes, and this should be the last in the row hydroelectric project, and it would hopefully make the corrections of some of the ecological problems that have been caused by the construction of dams in the upper flow of Drava River. And finally, I would really like to emphasize that whatever will be the final solution one day, it will be the solution in the best interest of two neighboring countries, two neighboring nations, and certainly in the best tradition of good cooperation between the two countries. Thank you.
Köszönöm szépen. We have some time for some questions, ladies and gentlemen. Please ask your questions.
Szinte eleve meghatározza a dolgot. Tehát szinte nincs tovább miről tárgyalni, gondolom én, mint laikus.
In fact, if we consider the fact that the area that we talk about, the Drávát River, is part of the Natura 2000 network, which means that it sort of predetermines the fate of our discussion. It seems, after all this, since it's part of the Natura 2000 network, we have no reason anymore to talk about it.
We did not start to talk about it. Thank you for your question. I think the views have been already in a way prefabricated, and I'm not particularly worried about the news appearing in the press, but I think that they have a little bit too much of dramatization, and it does not help to come to a very let's say sober and studied conclusion, and there is a little bit of nervosity about it, and I don't think that it is justified, because as I said, nothing is being done unilaterally, nothing is being done in a haste, and the desire is, I think I'm not jumping the conclusion, but the desire is on both sides to continue cooperation and consultations about everything, including, of course, Novo Virje concept.
Köszönöm szépen a kérdést. Tulajdonképpen a beszélgetést erről a kérdéskörről nem is mi kezdtük el, hanem eleve, hogy úgy mondjam, szinte kész tényeket állítottak elénk. És bizonyos
the Hungarian press for that. I think that Croatian press and Croatian public are contributing also to creating such atmosphere of nervous reaction. Even the population from the areas around Drava seem to overreact to the activities which are precisely the fulfillment of the Espoo Convention. The authorities in charge of investigations, of preparing the environmental impact assessment, are trying to find out the best possible data to bring a decision one day. And this research is often misunderstood as the preparation for the construction of the dam.
És tulajdonképpen ezzel én nem akarom vádolni most a magyar sajtót, hiszen azt tapasztaljuk, hogy nem csak a magyar sajtó részéről, hanem talán sokkal inkább
a környezeti hatásvizsgálatnak a elkészítése körülbelül mennyi időt vesz igénybe, amely alapján végülis a horvát kormány ki tudja alakítani a végleges álláspontját arról, hogy szándékozik-e építeni egy
daily on economy. And he's asking a question about to Mr. Ambassador about the environmental impact assessment. The question is, how long time do you think it will take to have the results of the environmental impact assessment that will enable the Croatian government to pass a final resolution, a final decision on whether they are going to build the hydropower plant or not?
Thank you for the question. But I'm afraid I cannot give you a precise answer. I can only say that the consultations, exchange of material and opinion is going on very intensely. Although we are in no hurry, as I said, we have plenty of time. But this is a very complex operation, so to say, and I think it goes without delay. As I mentioned, there was practically one contact or one exchange of material or data almost, I wouldn't say on daily basis, but there was at least one a month or probably more which is quite a lot for international communication, so to say. It might take certainly another year, two, maybe more.
Első a miniszter úrhoz. Miniszter úr, a Dráva...
Yes, I represent, in fact, the realistic green non-governmental organization, and I have 3 questions. The first question is to the minister, and the first question is about the following. If you look at the depths of the Drava river bed, it is in fact decreasing by 2.5 centimeter per year. What we find is that along the Drava river, for example, in Drava Tomási, in the wells, you find no water, and also in the wells that are found, that can be found on the area of the Natura 2000 network, you cannot find any water in the wells there. How can you get water into those wells? This is a question to the Hungarian minister. That was the first question. The second question, this is still a question to the Hungarian minister. Mr. Minister, what would you think about it if the representatives of the green organizations would push you sitting at this table aside and they would come to the front? Because this is what happened, in fact, in Bort. We heard about Bort, that a public hearing was held there not long ago, and this is what happened there. I have the video recording of this event in my hand, and I can give a copy of this to our minister and also to Mr. Ambassador. The third question is also for the Minister of Environment and Water in Hungary. And coming back to this, it's in fact not a video recording, it's a DVD about large public hearing, and I will make a copy available to Mr. Minister and also to the person who is conducting this press conference. And I think it's a witness, it's a testimony to the fact that a lot of questions were raised at the large public hearing on behalf of the Croatian party, but no Hungarian answers were given to the Croatian questions. My question to the minister is if we can expect in the close future that representatives of green organizations, non-governmental organizations, are also involved in issues like this. For example, representative of my organization, which is also working and is active in the area of water management issues, and the book of this person was also translated, I have it in my hand, was also translated into Chinese.
Először talán a legelső kérdésre, ugye a Dráva medermélyülése abnak a ténynek a következménye, hogy vannak a felsőbb szakaszon vízlépcsők.
My answer to the first question, the reason for the increased depths of the riverbed is that there are in fact hydropower plants in upstream of the river.
És jól lehet, ugye nagykövet úr azt mondja, hogy ez volna az utolsó lépcső vagy gát a Dráván. Nem látok semmi garanciát, hogy mitől ne volna szükség egy újabbra az alvízi szakaszon.
And although Mr. Ambassador emphasized that this is planned to be the last hydropower plant on the Drava River, I see no guarantee that there will be no need occurring later on to build a new one at lower sections.
A környezeti hatásvizsgálat eddigi eredményei alapján mondhatom azt, hogy a magyar pozíció nem változott, tehát Magyarország nem ért egyet a vízi erőművel, de természetesen itt a végleges hatásvizsgálati eredményt meg kell várni.
Of course, on the basis of the findings that we have so far and the results of the environmental impact assessment, the Hungarian position has not changed at all. That is, we continue to disagree with the idea of building the hydropower plant, but of course we have to wait until we have the final results of the EIA.
Ugye, mint igen fontos szempontot aláhúztam, az éppen az, hogy a Drávának a magyarországi szakaszán is vannak olyan élőhelyek, amelyek megőrzése elsődleges nem csak magyar, hanem európai érdek. Ez a ugye, Natura 2000-es hálózatba tartozó, automatikusan védetté minősülő területeket jelenti.
And of course, there are some important aspects for Hungary as well on the Drava River. What I have in mind is the habitat, the protection of which is not only in the interest of Hungary, but also in the interest of the European Union, simply because they are part of the Natura 2000 network, where under the Natura 2000 they are automatically protected.
Úgy gondolom, hogy a mostani tudásunk alapján ezeknek az élőhelyeknek a megőrzése a legjobban úgy biztosítható, hogyha nem épül meg a novovíriai vízi erőmű.
I believe that on the basis of the current knowledge and findings available to us, the protection of this habitat can be best ensured in case the Novaviria hydropower plant is not going to be built.
A Dráva a legutolsó olyan európai folyó, amelynek az úgynevezett folyó szabályozása még az eredeti élőhely rendszereket nem tette tulajdonképpen tönkre.
Drava is the last river in Europe, in fact, where the dams that have been so far built on the river have not destroyed the original habitat that can be found on the river and in the river.
A Drávának nem a felső szakaszára, hanem éppen a Mura-Dráva összefolyás utáni, hát ha úgy tetszik, magyar és horvát közös vizet jelentő szakaszáról beszélünk, nem az osztrák és nem a szlovén szakaszokról.
And when we talk about the fact that the habitat have not been destroyed in the river yet, in fact what we have in mind is not the upper part or upstream of the Drava River, which is above, in fact, the area where the Mura and the Drava River flow into each other. But in fact, what we have in mind is the lower section after this point.
Ugye a környezeti hatásvizsgálati közmeghallgatás, amelyet Barcson szerveztek, ugye ezen a közmeghallgatáson joga van minden szervezetnek, a helyi lakosságnak épp úgy, mint bármilyen zöld vagy nem zöld szervezetnek véleményét elmondani, és úgy gondolom, hogy ebben az nem kivetnivaló, hogyha magyar civil zöld szervezetek itt állást foglalnak.
And concerning the EIA public hearing that was held in Barge, I think at a public hearing like this, every organization, let it be a non-governmental organization, civil organization, or an individual, civil individual, they all have the right to make their comments and make their opinion available and known.
Ugye arra a kérdésre, amit szintén a Juhos úr kérdezett, hogy ugye nem valamennyi horvát kérdésre volt a közmeghallgatáson magyar válasz, hát erre azt tudom mondani, hogy a magyar választ az erre feljogosított szakmai szervezetek teszik meg, tehát ugye a magyar Körrnyezetvédelmi és Vízügyi Minisztériumnak a szakértői ebben az ügyben, ugye a hatásvizsgálattal foglalkozó szakértőinek a kapcsolata, ahogy nagykövet úr is említette, rendszeres a horvát hasonló szintű szakértőkkel, és valamennyi kérdés választ kap.
And concerning the third question, namely that not all questions on behalf of Croatia were answered on the Hungarian side, to give an answer to Croatian questions is a task for the Hungarian authorities and organizations that represent the expertise in this area, namely the experts of the Hungarian Ministry of Environment and Water, who are responsible for EIA issues. And in that respect, on both sides, the experts have a regular contact with each other and exchange of information.
Az ESPO-i egyezmény alapján nemzetek vagy országok, államok tárgyalnak egymással, és nyilván ebben a tárgyalásban megfelelő szakmai színvonalat kell biztosítani. Egy további esemény és lehetőség a lakosság véleményének megismerése a közmeghallgatás útján.
Under the ESPO procedure, in fact, countries are negotiating with each other, and when they are negotiating, they must provide proper expertise on both sides. And it goes without saying that also at the same time, in addition to this, the opinion of the public can also be heard at public hearings. I think we have no more time for further questions. I'd like to say thanks in particular to His Excellency Mr. Ambassador and to His Excellency our Minister.